Hi everyone and welcome back to another video. This video is part of a series that I'm making in which I answer your questions about my experience of being a woman who is child-free by choice. That is, being a woman who does not have kids, who doesn't want kids and will never have kids. In this video series, I'm answering questions asked by you guys in an attempt to reduce the stigma around being child-free, to educate people about what it means and what my personal experiences are, and just normalise the idea of being child-free by choice a little bit more. So let's jump straight into some of your questions. This person asked, have you ever sought sterilisation, and if so, how did you get on? And similarly, another person asked, would you undergo permanent sterilisation and what are your thoughts about that? And the answer is yes, I would absolutely love to be sterilised. As I said in the last video, pregnancy is one of the things that scares me the most in the world ever. The times that I've had pregnancy scares from things like broken condoms, it has been horrifying. I have spent weeks absolutely terrified, even with taking the morning after pill and stuff like that. It scares the hell out of me and it does mess me up a little bit. So having a more permanent solution like sterilisation would be perfect for me, and I have sought it out. I have spoken to doctors and I always get the same responses. Either I'm too young, I don't already have a number of children, or I'm not married and don't have a husband to okay it and sign off on it. And that really, really, really bothers me. They say they don't do sterilizations in the UK unless it's for a medical reason, unless you're over 40, unless you already have 4 kids, and on top of that, if you've got a husband to okay it and sign off on it too. The fact that I am a single woman, just under 30, with no kids of my own, they're like, oh no, you've no need for it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? They're like, you might change your mind. You might marry someone who wants kids. You might have... And I'm like, no, it's not gonna happen. And it bothers me because, okay, you can ask what if you change your mind, but what if I do? That's my responsibility to deal with the consequences of that, not yours to stop me if you think it's a risk. Do you know what I mean? You don't get people who go in and say they're pregnant and the doctors don't turn around and say, but what if you change your mind? What if you don't actually want this baby? What if in a few years you decide, actually, I don't like this kid? Doctors never ask that. So I don't get why they try and protect child-free people from changing their mind, but not pregnant people. It does bother me, and I do wish sterilisation was more normal. I do wish it was more available, and I do wish when particularly women say they want to be sterilised, I do wish it was taken more seriously and that there weren't sexist narratives around, oh, but you're not married yet, you don't have a husband who's okay with it. That really, really bothers me. I guess another option is that I could try and go private and pay for it myself, but so expensive, I couldn't afford it, and it's just a bit of a nightmare, isn't it really? This next question asked, how do you feel about people who say people who don't have children are selfish? And I actually have a whole video on this topic if you want to check it out. It's a video in response to the YouTubers Paul and Morgan and the statements put out by the Pope about how child-free people are selfish, and I went into a lot of detail in that video, so you can check it out if you want. I'll leave it in the video description. But for a brief answer, I would say it really, really bothers me because there are so many facets to this argument. For one, I think there are many selfish reasons to have children, and I think some people do have children for selfish reasons, but they're not called out in the same way that child-free people are. I also think that choosing to remain child-free isn't inherently selfish in itself. There are many, many reasons why different people choose to remain child-free, and not all of those are selfish. Some of them probably are selfish reasons, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I'll get onto that in a minute. Some of the reasons some people choose to remain child-free are because they think children have too much of an impact on a negative impact on the environment, on pollution and all that sorts of things. Some people don't think they'll be good parents. Some people don't want to pass on illnesses or kind of negative genetic traits to their kids. Some people can't afford to have kids and they don't want to bring a kid into the world where they know they're going to suffer or live in poverty or any other thing. There are many non-selfish reasons not to have children, and I think that's something that many people forget. Of course, there are maybe a few reasons not to have kids as well that could be considered selfish. For example, not wanting to go through pregnancy because you don't want to change your body, or because there are other things you want to do with your life, because you want to focus on a career or travelling or friends or whatever. And some people look at those reasons and say that they're selfish, but I still don't think that's a bad thing. Choosing to focus on yourself and do what's right for yourself isn't an inherently bad thing. There's nothing wrong with that. Why shouldn't you focus on yourself? Why shouldn't you make yourself happy? Why shouldn't you put yourself first and say, I'm not going to bring someone into the world that I can't look after because I want to focus on me? I don't think that's a bad thing. The other thing that I think a lot of people forget is that I think sometimes we need to look at people in terms of the net good or bad that they bring to the world. And for some people, the most good they can do in the world is by raising wonderful children who go on to do amazing things of their own. Some people do the most good in the world by being amazing parents. I know I'm not one of those people. So for me, the most good I can do in the world is by making educational videos, by helping other people, by donating to charity, by volunteering for charities, by, I'm writing a book that's hopefully going to educate people about poetry and help them out with that sort of thing, by creating art, by creating content that hopefully inspires other people, by trying to be a good role model for other people. I think that's the way I can do most good in the world. And if I had a kid that honestly would make me miserable, I couldn't do everything else that I'm doing. So the way I do the most good is by not having kids. And in that respect, I don't think that's a selfish thing at all. And I think that's something that a lot of people who think kids are the only way to do good in the world forget. The next question is more like a hypothetical what would you do one. And this is one that I think every child-free person is going to answer completely differently. So please know that my answer is not indicative of all child-free people, but just my own experiences. And this question is, what would you do if a child was dropped on your doorstep tomorrow? I think very simply, call the police. And while I was waiting for them to get here, I would take it down to reception in my building where they have 24-hour security and leave it with them. I'm not in any position to take care of a baby for any length of time or a child for any length of time. And if a baby or kid was just left with me, I don't think it would be safe with me. My house is not child friendly, it is not kid proof. I wouldn't know how to look after a child or a baby, it would suffer, so I would take it to people who do know how to deal with that and then get the authorities involved. Simple as that. It's not like an injured animal, I don't know how to take care of it. So like, as an example, a couple of years back now, and if you guys have followed me on Instagram, you might have seen this, but it was a while ago. Me and Kyra were on a walk and she called me over to this like pot of the grass and she just wasn't wanting to leave and she was like crying for me, and I went over and there was an injured bird and it was this pigeon with like a broken wing and he'd hurt his leg, and I called up the RSPCB and they were like, oh, it's just a pigeon, we can't do anything. And I called up the RSPCA because I was like, I'm not leaving an injured bird here. So I called up the RSPCA and they were like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll come out and get him. And it turned out he was a racing pigeon as well and he was injured, so he was someone's pigeon. And they talked me through getting him into like a box safely and taking him home, and they couldn't come out and collect him for about 5 hours, I think. So I took him home with me and I gave him food and I gave him water and I looked after him, and he was absolutely fine and he was happy, and I was more than happy to do that and take him in for a few hours until the people who could actually like get him back to his owner and get him to safety could come. Whereas I couldn't do that with a baby. I couldn't have a baby or a child in my house for a few hours because I wouldn't have a clue how to look after it, and I wouldn't enjoy looking after it, and I don't think I'd be the best person to look after it, unlike I was with that bird, because I get animals and I understand them and I don't mind having them in my home. Whereas a baby or a kid, it's like a whole different level of responsibility and one that I just don't understand, so I would pass them on to people who are better at that, There's some people who work on reception who have kids of their own, who know how to deal with them, and I'm like, yes, they would be better at dealing with this than me. So, and a similar question to this is, are you comfortable babysitting for others or just no kids in your aura at all? Yeah, no. I'm not a babysitter. Again, this is what I say. I don't know how to look after kids. I've never changed a nappy in my life and I don't want to. When my nephew was born, I remember one Christmas my brother was like, oh, shall I teach you how to change a nappy? And I was like, no thank you. And he was like, why not? And I was like, because if you teach me how to do that, I might have to do it, and I'd rather not. Looking after a baby or a kid like that is not something that interests me, and I don't like it. When I was 16, for my work experience, for some stupid, ridiculous reason, my school placed me in a nursery to work for 2 weeks, and it was 2 weeks of absolute pure hell. Thankfully, I kind of asked them to not put me up with the actual babies, so I didn't have to do that at any point, because they were supposed to switch us over, and I was like, I can't do this. I'm not working with the babies. So I was just with these like toddlers who were, I think, like 2.5 to 5-ish, something like that, and I was with them for like 10 hours a day, something like that, looking after these kids, and it was horrible and hellish and tiring, and I just did not enjoy it at all. It was thoroughly exhausting and not fun. I don't get kids. I don't really get anything out of spending time with them. I don't really enjoy it. I have a niece and nephew, and they're okay. You know, like I'll see them once or twice a year for a couple of hours, and they're fine, they're okay. But I think I'm gonna get on better with them when they're older, and you can have like a proper conversation with them. And like, I'm looking forward to when they're teenagers, you know? I think I'll be able to sort of relate to them at that point and get them a bit more, because at the minute I don't really know how to interact with them, and it's hard for me. That's not to say I don't like kids. I don't enjoy being around them, but I don't hate kids. That's what I mean. I don't dislike them, I don't hate them. As a person, I feel very, very protective of children, and I feel very much like I want to make sure they're safe. You know, if you ever saw anyone like mistreating a child, I would be upset by it. I'd try and stop it. I'd try and intervene and help, that sort of thing. And when I end up like reviewing books by the Pearls where they talk about like how to hit your kids and all this stuff, it's like that genuinely upsets me, because the idea of people hurting kids and mistreating them is something that really gets to me and really upsets me, and I really want to speak out about and try and stop and try and help. But that doesn't mean I want actual individual kids around me in my life, because I'm not really comfortable with that, and I think there are better people out there to look after them, you know? Simple as that. So yeah, thankfully my friends don't really have kids, so babysitting's never really been asked of me. Like I say, I have a niece and nephew, but I'd never like babysit them alone, because I wouldn't trust me to look after them properly. I wouldn't know what to do. I just no thank you. Simple as that. Even as a kid, I wasn't really comfortable being around other kids. I cope a lot better as an adult than I ever did as a kid around other kids. Yeah. But again, that's just my personal experience. That's not true of all child-free people. I know a lot of people who are child-free who are comfortable around other people's kids, and they are comfortable babysitting, or they are comfortable being teachers, or any of those things, and good for them. It's different for every single individual. And at this point, I think this is where I'm going to end this video for today. But if you like this, please subscribe for more videos. I'm going to be continuing this series of answering your questions about being child-free. I also make videos on book reviews. I talk about feminism. I talk about social issues. I talk about atheist stuff. I make video responses to people. I talk about science and history and all kinds of educational topics, and just basically whatever interests me at the time. So if you like this video and you want to see more from me, please go check out my back catalogue of videos. There are a lot of them out there. If you like this, please leave a like, please leave a comment, share the video around if you think it's going to be helpful to other people, because that also helps me. And for now, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again very, very soon.